Hi and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Kelly Johnstone and I'm the head of content. And actually one of the things that I'm working on now is transferring our accounts over from Universal Analytics to GA4. And really from my team's perspective, we need to understand what those changes will mean for us. And just like many other marketing departments, its impact is huge. So I really want to use this time with you today to help go through 8 of the things that I think you need to know that will never be the same again if you're used to using Universal Analytics. First thing that I want us to understand is how the hierarchy of analytics works. And it starts with a user, always starts with a user. And then users can have sessions, or multiple sessions. So every person can go onto your site or on your app many times. There are then events. So within a session, people can do things. These are things that people do. So from viewing a page to scrolling through your pages, all of these things are classed as events. The first thing you need to be aware of that is changing from Universal Analytics to GA4 is recording sessions. And that's how sessions are recorded. Our very meaning of what it means will be changing. So in Universal Analytics, if you didn't already know, a session is triggered when any new window starts. If you're already on site, you open up a second page in a different window, that is classed as a different session. In GA4 that changes. And really that means that it's not going to trigger those new sessions anymore. And this means that there will be less sessions in GA4 than in Universal Analytics. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't mean you're getting any less traffic. It just means the way that we measure it is changing. But it does mean it's a big deal. And it does mean that our year-on-year data will look significantly different looking in GA4 to Universal Analytics. And that means that we're going to have to reforecast all of our figures if your figures are based on sessions rather than users. And means that there's just lots of knock-on impact there, isn't there? So if that's already getting you scared, let's have a look at the next one. So the next thing to look at is measuring actions. In Universal Analytics, some of these things are already measured automatically, like page views, like transactions, and a few other hits as well. In GA4, not a lot is actually tracked manually. They manually track a handful of things for you, but then everything else you have to set up individually. This then means that you have a lot more control over what you're tracking, but it also means that you have a lot more control over what you're tracking, which means that you're responsible for setting all of that up. Scary, right? So an event, I'd like to wish that it was a party. It might be a little micro or macro conversion, so you might have a little whoop whoop moment in there, but it won't always be the case. An event is any data that was previously described as a hit. So they're the things that people do on our sites and in our apps. Things like page views, transactions, scroll depths. Events, the way that they work is also changing as well, which is worth bearing in mind. So if you've already set up your own events or track your own events in Analytics, then things are going to change. At the minute it's set up where you have a category, an action and a label. And now that is changing to an event and its parameters. Your parameters are the descriptive part of your event. So your event could be something like scroll depth, and you can really name that whatever you want. Parameters are then set to be triggered under certain conditions. So for example, 75%, 50%, 25%, that will then give you more explanation as to what you wanted to track. The way that we measure engagement is going to change as well. And I'm really sorry if I'm the first one to tell you this, but bounce rate is going. It will no longer be a thing, which is quite sad, I think, for quite a lot of marketers, especially quite a lot of content marketers, because it isn't normally one of the core metrics that is measured if you're looking at things like a blog post. And really, yes, it is sad to see it go, but from GA4's perspective, they are focusing instead on more positive metrics. So instead of looking at the people that are leaving, we're instead focusing on the people that are staying. So a few new metrics to get used to here. So here we have engaged sessions. So this is the number of sessions that stayed either over 10 seconds, converted, or had 2 or more screen views. So there are people that are actively engaging with your site rather than the people that are just clicking away. So it's just really a reverse bounce rate. You then have that engagement rate, which is the number of people that are engaged, as we just talked about, divided by the number of sessions. But remember, we can't compare this with universal analytics because our definition of sessions has changed. We then have the number of engaged sessions per user and average engagement time. So we do have a few new tricks up our sleeve. If you are in e-commerce, then actually GA4 looks like a really positive step forward. Although we're losing a lot of e-commerce reports, you are getting a brand new section called monetization. In this section, you've got loads of new terminologies to get your head around, but it does give some more in-depth analysis on a product level. So things like add to cart and the rates of abandonment. So that can really help you to make some informed decisions about your products and what's working and what's not, on both a product level and a category level. It also lets you look at things like in-app purchases, which really levels up our ability to look at app metrics in more detail. One of the bad things that is happening because of data rules around the world, is the reduction in data retention unless you run 360, which is the common caveat to everything here. That if you have a standard account at the minute, then you can retain data up to 26 months. This will be changing in GA4 from 2 to 14 months unless you're on 360, paying that extra, in which case you can get up to 50 months. So the user demographics for every account will only be set to a maximum of 2 months. This might be quite bad news really, because it will only ever give you a snapshot in time rather than being able to cross-compare this. And it also means for accounts that have a smaller number of sessions, you might not be able to get a lot of value out of this section anymore. For normal data, so everything else, you can either choose 2 or 14 months. That's it. You don't have a choice to look at 13 months or 10 months. You either have 2 or 14 months as standard now, which is a sharp contrast, and that's really going to hurt people trying to look at a yearly data on a year-on-year level. We just won't be able to do that anymore. Unless you have a 360 account, which again feels like an upsell opportunity from Google and another benefit that you will get if you have a paid account. Another thing that will be changing is setting account level filters. So on an account level we have 2 things. We have view filters at the minute in Universal Analytics, where you can view your account in lots of different ways. You can look at the raw data, you can make sure that you only filter out your internal staff, or like by department if you really wanted to. But that's all going, so there will just be one view, one single view, where you can add multiple data filters to it. This view will then remove any unwanted traffic, but you won't be able to view that traffic on its own. So you won't be able to look at a raw and a filtered view. It's just the one view that you can look at going forward. The traffic that you can take out, and you should be taking out, is your internal traffic and developer traffic. There is, however, a handy new tool in the configure section called the debug tool, and that allows you to see what events are being triggered, so you can really get into the detail of what's firing and what's not, to be able to make sure that your analytics is working as it should. The big one for me is that content reporting is changing. So where I used to be able to go in, have a quick look at like a landing page report, for example, add on a cheeky segment of organic traffic to see what pages are being landed on organically, that's a lot harder to do in GA4. There is no landing page report. There's a pages report that automatically filters for the page title or the screen name, but not a landing page report, so you have to build those separately. You also can't look at things like the title, well not the title, you can't look at add those quick segments like adding in organic traffic to just look at organic traffic. You can if you type it in manually, but as soon as you click away, that segment's disappeared and you can't save it. So that's a bit of a frustration for me, but it does force you to use the explore section, the more advanced custom reporting than I've ever had to do for Universal Analytics. So as a content team, we have to look at this new explore section. And funnily enough, when you click on explore, it then changes it to explorations, because each one is called explore, so then it's explorations. There you go, fun fact for you. So these are very much advanced custom reports, and for quite a lot of people will be more advanced than you've ever wanted to do before. So we will have to make sure that they are built either by you or your data teams if you have them. So we're going to have to get our heads around them, and I will be creating a tutorial on how to do that, because I have started to have a play with creating a landing page report, which will be an absolute lifesaver for us to make sure that we can continue to do the work that we do. So there are some limits when it comes to using the explore section and creating your own reports. Things like only being able to create 200 explorations, which might sound a lot when you're starting off with 0, but actually you add in a few funnel reports and different people add in their own. With the 500 shared explorations per property, that's going to soon rack up. That is unless you have a 360 account, where the limit is then 1,000, which again is another upsell opportunity, where they've seen that you get more value if you are paying for it. You then have a sampling of 10 million events on standard accounts, unless you have 360, which is then 1 billion. Sounds like a lot, but again, if you're looking at like 14 months worth of data, and an event is a page view, scroll depth, each one of those triggering the separate events as you scroll down, then you can have tens or hundreds of events per session per person. So that's soon going to rack up. One of the good things about GA4, I know that I have given you a lot of bad news in this one, that a lot of things are changing and that feels a bit scary, but one of the good things for marketers is that we're going to be able to build some really nice audiences. At the minute we can already do this, which are often used for retargeting, and all of those at the minute are based on something that's already been done. Whereas with GA4 we can start looking at predictive audiences. So where at the minute we can target people that have added to the cart but not purchased, in GA4 we can predict when people might purchase, so they might not have even got to that stage yet, and we can push them past. We can predict when people are going to churn, depending on our definition of that, and we can even predict how much they're going to spend based on the data that we already have. So all of that can then be used to create dynamic audiences that can be used to retarget to. So I think that's pretty clever. In summary, there are 8 things that I think are most important. There are a lot of other changes that are coming, especially on a more granular level if you look at the account, but I think these are the top 8 things that will have the biggest impact to me, my team, and the businesses that I help. So these things are the recording of sessions, that our very definition of what a session is changing. That we're going to measure all actions as events, and that even the definition of events and how we measure that is going to be changing. Measuring engagement, that's going to completely change as well. That bounce rate will be a thing of the past. It's going to be one of those, in my day, when we looked at bounce rate sorts of jobs. It's going to be so much easier for those with e-commerce sites to find the data that they need. But we're not going to have access to the data that we used to anymore, which I think is going to be quite sad for a lot of businesses. We also make sure that we're really making valuable decisions. We then have things like account level filters, making sure that we only have one filtered view. That's just a lot of admin that we've got to sort out before these accounts go live, isn't it? Content reporting, if you work in a content team or report on content for your teams, then the way that we do that will significantly change, and we're going to be spending a lot of time in that explore section trying to get to grips with that. And then we have audiences that we're now going to be able to predict what people are doing, which hopefully should make our marketing a lot stronger. in all, I really hope that you have got some value from this and that you've learned what changes to expect as you go through the transition from Universal Analytics to GA4. As my parting message, I would probably say to start working on those changes as soon as possible, and like me, get to grips with what GA4 is to be able to move things across. It's going to be a hard few months, I think, for a lot of businesses as we get to grips with all of this. But I'm hoping that these will be some positive changes for us all. So thank you very much for listening. Please remember to like and subscribe for more. Thank you. Bye.